Hello, Komorebi family. How are you? Well, today I bring you another topic. It is about emotional responsibility and emotional intelligence. I don't know you guys, but I don't know how many times has it happened to you that you dislike everything in your life, including the people that surrounds you, your friends, your family, even yourself. How many times have you desired to be left alone, but when you have the chance, you cannot appreciate it because you become afraid of everything that you see, even in yourself? Have you ever felt that you're afraid to be alone with your own thoughts, as if you don't know yourself? I want to ask you, if you ever wondered how have you ever given up your power? How do you do? When did it happen that you lost yourself, or that you don't feel completely full, satisfied? So where you put your attention, you put the intention. Okay, so you give the power to the issue that you are putting your attention to. So it grows and gets bigger depending on the amount of attention that we're putting into the issue that we are seeing, right? So let's say we pick an emotion that is creating a discomfort. How do we pick it? Well, we recognize it. We see what is bothering us. We try to see if that emotion is based on ego or fears. Let's say fear, like fear per se. It could be fear to violence. It could be fear to be left alone, fear of our own thoughts, fear of failure. There are many fears that we can have, that we can feel. So once we recognize the emotion, we identify it, we feel the emotion, then we go to another step, that is to remove the negative emotion and change it for something positive. So it's not just recognize it, think about it, and that's it. No, we have to feel the emotion, okay? So to be able to realize that we don't like the way we're feeling. Once we recognize it, we change it into something positive. By doing so, we remove the attention from the negative emotion completely. Why? Because we start thinking on something positive, on something good. If we start doing this exercise often, we're not just removing the power that we are giving and that we're giving to that specific situation, but we're getting back the power that we have lost. So we're just uncreating what we had already created in our electromagnetic, in all our electromagnetic field. So in order for an event to happen, for something to happen, we might had created before in our mind. The way we tend to create these distressing thoughts and all these emotions is by picking emotions and picking moments from our past. This, what happens in our brain, is that we start working on beta wave states. So our mind starts working on past event, on past thoughts. So we cannot move forward into something new because we still live in the past, okay? how can we do so this can change? Okay, we always come up to that question. So, okay, we already identified, we know what is going on, but how can we change? How can we make it positive? So, the change happens when we can stop living in the past and we begin to live in the present. But I know it comes back the question, but how, Karen, how? Well, as simply as by compromising on becoming responsible for our emotions, which is emotionally responsible of all our thoughts and our emotions. So then we can start to live in the present. We can begin that process of living in the present. So when we react to different situations in a state of low consciousness or with a poor awareness, we are reacting in a defensive mode or sometimes in anger. So what we are creating in our body is that we're activating this response that is, a lot of people recognize it or they have heard about, that is called flight and fight. That is a response of our nervous system. So this causes an imbalance in our brain and in our body. Since the chemicals of stress that we produce, right, they start to arouse in our body, okay? They start sending these signals into our body, okay? And the signal is that there is danger in the area. So be careful, okay? So the body and the brain start to recognize that signal. And they start thinking, okay, hold on one second, there is a threat out there. So I have to be very careful. So what happens in our body is that we activate that primitive system, which is very adaptive, okay? That primitive system is that innate response that we feel, where the brain recognizes that there is a threat, like when we have somebody chasing us, okay? And then we have, let's say, a bear chasing us, a predator, okay, chasing us. So it translates in our mind into a threat, into a fear, into an emotion that we cannot control. And it diminishes our capacity to predict what is going to happen. And the only thing we know is that things are going to get worse, that nothing is going to get better. So sometimes this is when we imagine that we have to protect our family. You know, that fear that can be transformed into different emotions, such as anger, frustration, unforgiveness, vengefulness. So there are these emotions that we start feeling, and that's when we start, like, everything starts to stop. Everything begins to stop, and we feel like we're going in circles, okay? Because nothing looks right. These emotions, for some people, it's very hard to identify them, these programs. And so that's why we use the spiritual response therapy, because we can point them, we can find the origin, we can identify them, we can recognize them, so we can start working consciously on something that we already know, that we have a name for it. So this is very important, because we can start making sense of what is happening to us. It can also adapt to another situations, like when we look at the news, or we look at the media, or when we receive an email or a text or a message that that we don't like, that we feel like that creates a stressful reaction in us, that activates that fight and flight response from our nervous system, right? So the problem arises when we lose the power to be able to turn it off, or being able to move from these stimuli, right? So when this occurs, we begin to walk on this path of diseases, of that people start suffering even of nervous breakdowns or panic attacks, or even getting sick with different cancers and different diseases in their body, because even the immune system tends to lower their immune response. So because all these emotions start to get stored in their bodies, right? So because as human beings, we cannot live in this primitive state. We cannot live on an emergency mode for a long period of time. Otherwise, we get sick. So the important point here, okay, is to begin to acknowledge the emotional responsibility that we owe to ourselves. Everything begins within us, on ourselves. Therefore, it is not about not reacting or being perfect, or just shutting down our mouth and not being able to feel or to sense because we want to be perfect. But it is more it is about recognizing how long do we allow ourselves to live into these emotions, into these distressful situations, right? So, and what we do to get rid of those emotions, that's the important thing. So that's why we develop, with all these spiritual techniques and psychological techniques, we develop this emotional responsibility, okay, that will lead us into the path of emotional intelligence. So when we decide to remove our attention from that distressing thought, from that distressing event, that's when we begin to dissociate ourselves and our attention from that problem. This is when we begin to walk on the path of what it is emotional intelligence. Okay? So the people that want to change their reality and they want to improve it, they need to change the attention focus on the issue that they are experiencing at this moment, and they need to change that focus into something better. Okay? Probably the way they could do it is by finding any hobbies or any distractions. For example, crafting, painting, conscious breathing. They can do meditation, cooking, playing an instrument, walking, etc. Like so many other things, okay? But mostly meditation. But how do they do it? How do they make this change? How do we identify the problem or the emotion? How can I distract my mind and change the attention if I am living in my daily life has time constraints, right? Like we live in a world where everything is time concerning. Everything has a time limit. So nowadays everything has a schedule and a due date. This creates the perfect environment for people to live under stress and in a constant arousal cycle filled with hormones of stress. There are three main aspects that people take into consideration on a daily basis when creating and living their own reality. 1 is the body, 2, the environment, and 3, they also take into consideration the time. Normally, most of the people, they base their truth and awareness on what they can see and what they know. People begin to focus their attention on their bodies. That's the first thing we start focusing the attention into. So what happened, people, things, places, those are the things that start to become our own identities. Because this is what normally people feel and what they are connected to, okay? This is what makes up their environment. So we see ourselves, but we also see how we can connect with everybody else that is physical, okay? These are the beliefs that make people try to predict their future. And this is something that is very limited because people normally are creating what they are living because they are living in the past. Because everything that we are creating starts by a thought that originates from something that we already know and that already happened, okay? So people try to create or predict their future, but they do not live in the present moment. What this causes in the person is that it continues to live in all these same emotions, the same thoughts, the same experiences over and over and over again. So there is a cycle where we create our thoughts with a certain vibration, okay? That thought causes in us to have the same actions, and then we have the same emotions. So it starts all over again. So the future is already predicted, okay? So in order for us to change that, we have to change the frequency of the thought, the level of consciousness, of awareness of that thought. So we have to stop putting our attention in the past, okay? So we have to stop focusing on the material things because since we want to prevent more danger, okay, we keep our focus there. But if we remove the focus from that material aspect, now we can move on. For example, you receive an email, okay, or a news or whatever that is distressing you. The more you pay attention to that email or to that news or that distressing thing, the more you're giving your power away. Where you put your attention, you're giving your power away. Why? Because that is where you place your attention. See? Did you follow me? So the way to break free from this cycle, this vicious cycle of stress, okay, and of low consciousness, is to remove the attention from the problem. This way, if we do that, we can change our emotional reaction because it no longer has all the power of our thoughts and at the end of our emotions, right? The main problem here is that a lot of people stay in this stressful state. They put their mind into this stressful situation and they maintain these emotions for days, for months. So they become victims. They become trapped. They become trapped into their own thoughts, right? Into this vicious, distressful world. Which as a result, it turns their mood. All these emotions turn into a mood, and then that turns into their temperament. Okay? So the way that people have to break free from this cycle, all this stressful cycle, is by simply trying to control the emotions, identify, well, I wouldn't say control, but just to remove the power from those emotions, identify them, acknowledge them, just be thankful for them because they existed at one point. They help you become a better person now from what you were in the past. But now there is a point that you have to let go. Okay? Because if you stay with that state of mind, with that anger, with that sadness, with that sense of unworthiness, with that unforgiveness, that creates problems. That distorts your field, your electromagnetic field. So everything that you're going to continue receiving from the world, from the universe, is more of the same. So the only way to change it is to change the level of consciousness, is to change the thought. I'm going to give you more tips in another videos, but I'm going to leave you this one here so we can start thinking and analyzing the way we're starting, the way that we've been living so far. Have a wonderful day, beautiful Comoretti family, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day and rest of the week. In case we don't see each other again for the rest of the week. Take care. Bye-bye.